This is Brannon House Live. Whether the issue is law, science, economics, history, family, social issues, education, religion, government, or national security, Brannon brings the issues of the day into clear focus through the lens of a Judeo-Christian worldview. And now, here is your host, Brannon House.
And welcome to the broadcast on this Tuesday night, February 17th, 2025. Tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, Truth Social. We're going to have on Gordon Chang about China and Russia, Iran running exercises related around the Strait of Hormuz, which could certainly disrupt the flow of energy and affect fuel prices. We're also going to talk about China and their possible advancement in the future on Taiwan or the Philippines, because we also have reports that the United States is sending more radar systems to the Philippines to help protect the Philippines. We're going to talk about so much with Gordon Chang tonight. I won't get into it all, but I will tell you this. I want to ask him about World War III. Where does he think it will start? Remember, he has warned that he thinks the next war will be fought on American soil. Does he think the World War III will start over there and spill over to here, or start over here? And could any of it have to do with the biolabs, like the one found in Reedley, California, or recently in Las Vegas? How many of those are around the country? Is that how it could start, World War III, with a bio warfare attack by the CCP on America? Lots to get to with Gordon Chang tonight. We're also going to have on Shannon Everett, because there have been more and more crashes of illegals. More illegals. They're still involved in these crashes. And apparently, some of the brokers and groups that are putting these illegals on the street are getting protection. Should they not be held liable for the drivers they're putting on the street, some of these brokers? I want to ask Shannon Everett about that. And I want to ask him about who is it behind shoving these drivers behind the wheel? How much of this is cartels or organized crime, slave labor, if you will? Get into that with Shannon Everett of American Truckers. And then I want to have on Dr. Lana to talk about processed foods. What do the processed foods do to your brain? And are they made so that they are addictive on purpose and they alter the brain? And then the Great Taking. We've talked about that, a year and a half, 2 years ago, the Great Taking? Well, there's more information out now. Did you know that so many of your assets are at risk tonight? Did you know the small print when it comes to your bank account? Who really owns that? That you're an uninsured creditor? How about your IRA tonight? Well, here's an article headline from redstate.com. The next big crash could wipe everyone out except Wall Street. You need to know about this, folks. One of the closing lines in this article is that the legal framework that will govern the next major financial crisis is already in place, and it was explicitly designed to protect large institutions alone. This should send shivers down the spine of every American, because the bottom line is that when the next big crash comes, whether it be months or even years from now, big banks will be hunky-dory, while everyday Americans will get absolutely hammered. We're going to get into that tonight with some video clips that include, of course, G. Edward Griffin, David Webb, and others. And we're going to have Michael Weiner respond. So we have quite a big program tonight. Have I left anybody out, Logan? Yeah, I got Gordon, Nick Holscher, Michael Weiner, Dr. Lana, and Shannon Everett. That is a big lineup tonight. Where are you going to get a program like this? Unless you'd like me to scrap the whole thing, maybe we should just scrap that. Maybe we should cancel everybody, Logan. Let's just talk about Nancy Guthrie. Oh, I think the glove came back today, and there was no DNA connection from the glove to the house. But hey, remember when they rushed out with camera crew to film them picking up a black glove and putting it into a plastic bag, Logan? Breaking news, they found a glove. Breaking news, they found a Dixie cup on the side of the road. Breaking news. Oh, they found a toothpick on the other side of the road. Look, I'm not making light of Nancy Guthrie. I pray she comes back home. But, oh my, there are so many important issues that impact every one of you tonight and your children and your grandchildren. And yet days and days they keep going on this Nancy Guthrie. I don't even watch Fox News, but I have it on in one room to walk through just to see what they're talking about. And I would think at this point they would have given this up and come back to it every now and then with all the pressing issues facing us and the world. Man, I'm starting to think something is going on here. Oh, by the way, I also want to talk with Dr. Lana about insulin resistance and how it may be driving, what are they saying now, about 12 different types of cancer, according to researchers? Insulin resistance. And people who are pre-diabetic should listen up to all of this. All right, let's see here, Logan. We are getting a lot of you that are putting your puppy, your fur baby, on Happy Howl. Dolly, as you know, is now on it. And one of the other fur babies, the little white schnauzer, Pearl, is on it. And they love it. They absolutely love it. And I don't have to refrigerate it, put it in a freezer, thaw it out, nothing. When I get up in the morning, folks, I put on a baseball cap and I go out and a robe. Do we need to know that much information, Logan? And go out to the kitchen to feed Dolly. She first goes out, does her business, comes back in. She's ready to eat. I don't want to mess with frozen food. And she was bored with her dried dog food. So we did a little research and we found Happy Howl. And all I got to do, now Melissa says she can rip it with her hand, but I can't. I don't. So I use the scissors and I just take this thing and I dump that food in there. And boy, she is so ready for it. I put a little Gatatana, sprinkle half a scoop on that. Morning and night, you could travel with it. You don't have to worry about refrigerating it, freezing it. And it's 100% human grade ingredients. No artificial preservatives, complete and balanced for all life stages, cooked in a USDA kitchen. So there you go. That's a great product. Highly recommend it. Dollyfood.shop. And with each purchase, you're also not only, I think, feeding your dog the best food that I've now found, and that's what our dogs are on, 2 of the 3. The other one, she has gluten allergies, so she can't be on it. But you're also supporting us. So Dollyfood.shop. What else do we got, Logan? We know we do the Bella Grace. I already took one today, so I don't have it up here. Oh, look at that. It's already gone. There you go. So Bella Grace, you can go there to melissahousebg.com, melissahousebg.com. Of course, it also has the Bella Melts, which stimulates your body's natural GLP-1. You know, they got the skincare over there. Melissa loves that as well. We got the Numi. That's got the glutathione in it to detox your cells. Oh, and there's so many toxins, more than we even realize that we're coming in contact with. And of course, I don't want dementia or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. And studies show, like 165,000 studies on glutathione, it may help remove mercury from your brain, helping prevent those things. So you can get that, Logan, at swishforlife.com, swishforlife.com. Of course, you'll find all of them on one page alone. What is that? Everybody say it out loud together. worldviewtube.com/what, folks? Sponsors. There it is. worldviewtube.com/sponsors. I wonder if the dollyfood.shop has gotten over there yet. Has anyone made a banner for that page yet? No, someone's been a little busy. But we're going to get it up there, right, Logan? And we also need to get up real quick where you can start registering for our fall national conference. I sure hope we can get that done this week, Logan. It should be. He's checking. Soon and very soon. It is. Well, look at that. worldviewtube.com/events. Is it also in the bookstore? worldviewtube.com/events. That was the crowd there at the one in April. And that's the building we're going to be in again, Lord willing. We've got the contract signed. We've paid the deposit. the 23rd annual Worldview Weekend. We're breaking news right now. Where is the breaking news logo, icon, sound effects? Because we got breaking news. We have just found out you can register free of charge now. I did not know this till right now. It's up there and it's now working. You can register for the Worldview Weekend National Conference right now. Now, it is free, but you have to register to secure a seat. Look, we went there for one night, and look how many people showed up. There was standing room only. They were standing back in the back. And that was just me and Aaron and Dr. Woods. This year, I'm bringing with me, let's see, where's my little notebook, Logan? I don't know that that's the right notebook here, but I know we're going to have Dr. Woods. We've invited him back. Annie Cyrus, Alex Newman. Who else have we confirmed? I can't remember. We're going to have to get that up online. But we're going to have about 8 or 9 speakers, 8 or 9 of them, folks. And you don't want to miss out on the 23rd annual Worldview Weekend. We need to actually make that the headline, Logan. 23rd annual National Worldview Weekend Conference in Milwaukee, to be precise, in Waukesha, at the Waukesha Expo Center. You know, Donald Trump has done 2 rallies in that building. Did you know President Reagan spoke in that building? Kind of a historical building, isn't it? President Reagan spoke on that platform. And so we're going to hold our national conference there. It's a great location. The staff is always so wonderful to us. And you can now register tonight. worldviewtube.com/events. worldviewtube.com/events. All right. I'm excited about that. And we'll get a banner going. We'll get a banner up there on that one as well. All right. We got to get going. But again, I want to make sure you also remember one of the greatest ways you can support us is by going to worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. One of the most powerful ways to support us so we can keep pushing out free program each and every night. Worldviewfoundation.com. We got to get going. Got Gordon Chang. Gordon Chang is in the room. He's in the waiting room right now. So let's not waste any time. Joining me now is Gordon G. Chang. Gordon G. Chang. Mr. Chang, welcome back to the broadcast. Thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you so much, Brandon. And happy Lunar New Year.
Happy Lunar New Year. Exactly. Well, there's so much in the news that's kind of just distressing and troubling tonight. Let's see if we can work our way through it. I found out there on your X account today a very interesting video clip showing what China is up to. Here's a clip. We'll have the audience watch. I know you've already watched it, and then we'll have you respond to it.
Going back to Undersecretary Donato's remarks in Geneva, we are aware of yield-producing nuclear explosive testing in China. We are aware that they are using decoupling, which is essentially a method to reduce the effectiveness of seismic apparatus to detect this. We've been paying very close attention to this, obviously a very important issue. On June 22nd, 2020, we are aware that China conducted a nuclear explosive test. The probable explosion occurred right near the Lop Nur nuclear test site. That's China's nuclear test site. A magnitude, so a few details. I've noticed on X and et cetera, folks are really looking hard for this. So I'm going to make it a little easier. 0918-918 Zulu, Greenwich Mean Time, Kazakhstan station, PS-23, and it detected a 2.75 magnitude. That is in Makanchi, Kazakhstan.
Wow. So obviously this is an indication that China is detonating and testing nuclear weapons, correct, Mr. Chang?
Yes, because there's really no other explanation for a seismic event near Lop Nur, which, as you mentioned, is where China tests nuclear weapons. Now, China's probably been testing before the one on June 22nd, 2020, which he mentioned, but we know that they have been lying about it. Now, China has signed but not ratified the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. But they've said that they are adhering to a moratorium on nuclear detonations, and obviously they're lying.
Obviously, they're lying. So they're preparing for war, right? I mean, they're continuing to prepare for war.
Yes, and what they're testing, from all that we know, is they're building a new set of nuclear weapons, battlefield weapons, tactical ones, which basically they do intend to use. They wouldn't need to test if they were trying to just basically make sure their stockpiles still work. What we have done, we haven't tested since like 1992 or so. We have to conduct non-explosive tests to make sure that our weapons still will go off. But we don't need to actually detonate one because we're not building battlefield nukes. But if we were to do that, then yes, we would have to test. And President Trump said we should start testing. And I think he's absolutely right, because the Chinese and the Russians have been testing, and that means we've got to do so as well.
Now, Iran. We have about a third of our Navy now over there near Iran. And I'm reading from some of your reports that China has transferred radars to Iran. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, there are reports that China has sent recently radars to Iran. Now, on the night of January 3, Chinese radars and command control systems did not see more than 150 American aircraft either in Venezuelan airspace or near to it, which means that they weren't very good. But I am sure that China is sending upgraded radars because, the export versions are not nearly as capable as the ones that China keeps itself. I just don't know what versions China is sending, but I'm sure it's much better than the stuff that Venezuela had.
Let's talk about something I just put up over at our worldviewreport.com site. That's our daily aggregated news site, folks, if you want to go there, worldviewreport.com. Here we go. China's mystery seeds are an ongoing attack on America's food supply. Look at that, written by Gordon G. Chang over at The Hill. I think we've touched on this before, but they're clearly going after our food supply, right?
Yes, we've touched on this before because before, especially in 2020, China sent seeds unsolicited to Americans in all 50 states. Its activity picked up again. And the reason why I wrote about this one more time is because last year, especially in Texas, but also in New Mexico and in Alabama, and Ohio, people were sent seeds and unidentified liquids. So China is going back to this. This occurred right, at the same time that those researchers at the University of Michigan were smuggling into the United States modified roundworms as well as modified fungus. And clearly, because they were trying to do this surreptitiously, they were up to no good. Probably they were trying to go after American agriculture again in a different way. But China is attacking our food supply with biological weapons, weapons of mass destruction. And we need to protect our agriculture because this is an attack on every single American.
And it seems to be coming at a time when our beef, our meat is the herds are going down. I've been reading all week long, and of course, it's been coming for a while, but more in the news today. More American herds are going down. We're at the lowest level for beef on hand we've been in several decades. Many of the American farmers just can't make it. Things are getting too expensive for them, and they're having to sell their herding stock. And of course, the president, I guess, is going to be bringing in more beef from, where did I read? He's coming in Argentina or somewhere, bringing in more beef. So add this, what looks to be, of course, also folks that have been arrested, tied, I guess, to some universities coming in from China with various fungi and whatnot could impact crops. Then these seeds. Now we have an economic situation where our cattle is getting to low numbers. I mean, you start going after the meat and the crops. Is it inconceivable that Americans could face famine?
Well, that's what China is trying to do. I think that we eventually will rally ourselves, but we know that this is an attack on many fronts. China owns Smithfield Foods, the biggest producer of pork, and we allowed that sale. I think that we need to expropriate that, paid compensation, but we need to take back our food supply. We need to get the Chinese out of it. They've shown malicious intent. I don't know what we're waiting for. So before Americans start dying in any numbers, because any one American dying is one too many, we need to get the Chinese out of our food supply, off our land, off our ranches. Let's just get them out of here.
What about China? I saw an article in the New York Post this week. Why China wants Governor Gavin Newsom to be U.S. president. Why do they want him for president?
Because he's Gavin Newsom. I
know that was kind of a rhetorical question, but I'm just doing my job here. But I think I already know the answer, but go ahead. Yeah.
Well, Gavin Newsom's he wants electric vehicles, which just are not practical. He's going to create a crisis in California by forcing the refineries out. Yesterday, we were in California. We drove by the Valero refinery that will be shut down. There'll be a gasoline crisis in California. We paid for gas at $5.45 a gallon. That's crazy because we're in New Jersey now. We pay $2.45 or $2.50. So, obviously they want to see America in an energy crisis. They want an open border. They want all this DEI crap. And that's the Gavin Newsom. So, he looks fine. He talks well. But clearly he wants policies that the Communist Party loves because they weaken America.
And then how about this headline from military.com? U.S. plans to deploy more missile launchers to the Philippines despite China's alarm. You and I have talked about Taiwan being under attack potentially at some point by China, the Philippines, and here we are. The U.S. is going to send them some more missile launchers.
Yeah, the Typhoon launchers, which basically will close off straits for China, will complicate their decisions on invading Taiwan. So, we withdrew the Typhoon system from Japan after a military exercise last year. We need to put them back there. We need to make each of these islands a fortress. And the Marine Corps is doing a great job in reconfiguring itself. Basically, the idea is to put a few number of Marines on a small spigots of land in the East China Sea, South China Sea, and with missile launchers that can take out Chinese ships. So this is really important. And that's why Beijing has been throwing a fit every time we base missiles in somewhere on their periphery.
What about China, Russia, Iran doing some practices near the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, that's important. Iran announced this, and this means you'll have Chinese, Russians, and Iranian ships in close proximity to the American vessels off of Iran. So this is how wars start. It's very dangerous when you have navies that are hostile to each other in close proximity.
You say this is how wars start. So what you have is someone that misinterprets something and they make a shot, they fire, and pretty soon you've got kinetic action going there, and that's how things escalate.
Yes. So, for instance, about a couple of weeks ago, the Iranians sent a drone near the Abraham Lincoln, a carrier, and we shot it down. But, they could just try something like that. And when you have these warships very near each other, anything can go wrong, especially because the Chinese very well may try something, or the Russians, who can be crazy, they can do something as well. So this is a volatile situation. And with all those warships and sharing the same waters, God knows what will happen.
Do you think China would come to the defense of Iran if Trump and Netanyahu go after Iran?
I don't think so. Because China doesn't have the capability right now to deploy force in the numbers that are required. So, for instance, on these naval exercises you mentioned, China will send a number of warships, but only two that really count, two destroyers, which are extremely capable ships. but they're just not enough. So, and the same thing for the Russians. They'll send good ships, but they won't be enough because the U.S., as you pointed out, has an extraordinary number of vessels off of Iran. And that means China and Russia and Iran will be vastly outnumbered. But, when we deploy so many forces there, it leaves other areas open. And I just saw a few moments ago that a tanker with China or so just docked at Cuba. It broke through the sanction line. And that means we don't have enough ships around Cuba to enforce President Trump's order. So, yeah, we may be okay off of Iran, but China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, they could start something someplace else, and we'd be stretched very, very thin.
Is this video accurate? You never know today with deep fakes and whatnot. Is this real? Look at here. Is that real? Has China really advanced their robots that far?
I think they have. Now, those robots are not autonomous, as China claims. And there's a lot of commentary on Chinese social media that they were being directed by people behind the wall. And I don't know if that's true or not, but yeah, they're really good. There's no question about it.
Are we going to see the next level of warfare? Is it going to be more drones and then drones and robots? Is there going to come a time where the idea of drafting bodies onto the battlefield is a thing of the past? It's more now drone warfare and robot warfare?
Well, it will be more drones and robots, but I don't think that humans are going to be out of the loop. So, yeah, it's more autonomous warfare. It's going to be AI directing a lot of the, China has never promised not to use AI and to make killing decisions autonomously, which we've wanted them to make that pledge because we don't do that. And I think that we probably are going to have to change the way we think about this because the Chinese are doing things. China does something, we've got to do it as well.
Latest on China going against Taiwan, because we have a clip of the Secretary of Treasury Besant saying a few weeks ago that an attack on Taiwan and cutting off the chips would be an economic apocalypse. Any updates on China and their aggression toward Taiwan, or putting an embargo around it so chips can't come out?
No updates since then. The news is that a day or so ago, President Trump on Air Force One said he would talk to Xi Jinping about future arms sales. That, by the way, is a violation of Ronald Reagan's 6 assurances, because one of those 6 assurances is that we do not talk to the Chinese about arms sales to Taiwan. And that was an important promise that Reagan made. And I don't like the idea that Trump either just ignored it or didn't know about it. But we shouldn't be talking to China about defending another democracy. That's, this never works. You never can cooperate with a militant state. And unfortunately, we never learn the lesson, which means we pay great prices when wars start.
And when wars start, you have said over and over, you think the next war will be fought on our soil here in the U.S.
And it probably starts here, too.
How does that look? The starting.
It can start a number of ways. So, for instance, 6 months before anybody fires a shot, we see Americans dying or being sickened by some disease. Remember, on January 31, Las Vegas SWAT raided a home near whatever that Air Force base is there. I keep on forgetting, Nellis. And the reason why we found out about it was because a housekeeper reported to authorities that people who were living in that house were quote unquote, deathly ill. So what was found in Las Vegas was essentially a secret Chinese biological weapons lab. And by the way, it was connected with the one that was found in Reedley, California in December 2022, which had almost 1,000 mice that had been genetically engineered to spread disease, and at least, by official account, 20 pathogens, including ones for fatal diseases like Ebola. So that's one way it could start. We're going to find that these Chinese agents, operatives, and soldiers are going to start to take down our electric grids, poison water, start wildfires, explode bombs. There's any number of different ways to disrupt the United States. Mm-hmm. But I think the war starts, in all probability, a war over there starts here.
And you think it's probably by the bioweapons, likely, or you said attacking the infrastructure. The bioweapon, is that higher on your list than cyber hacking or going after water, but them releasing something?
Yeah, well, it's all the above, Brandon. So we know that they're bringing in these modified pathogens. Now, as I mentioned, both the roundworms and the fungus that were found in June and November, those were modified pathogens. Now, they probably modified to make them either more transmissible or more pesticide resistant. But these guys weren't bringing in something in an innocent way because they were researchers. They were professionals. They knew what the rules and the protocols are for the handling of pathogens. And they wouldn't have risked their careers if this was something which was innocent. So, and we let these guys off with slaps on the wrists. So this is also on us. These guys are coming here to kill us, and we don't put them in Guantanamo. I think we should not put them through the federal judicial system. They should be sent straight to indefinite detention, like forever.
The garage in Reedley, California, what was just found in Las Vegas, these are all very crude, off the radar facilities. Right. And in both cases, one guy in Reedley saw an extension cord and called authorities. This one, someone reports something not smelling right and people getting sick in this Airbnb. And you think about all the Airbnbs, by the way, that people stay in. I would venture to guess millions of people stay in an Airbnb across America on any given weekend. Can you imagine targeting, 2,000 Airbnbs or 1,000 Airbnbs? I don't know how many you would have to target, 500 Airbnbs strategically across the country and infect those people. And then those carriers go out. And by the time we know, it's weeks with no, asymptomatic, but the spread has already started. So that by the time you find out, it's weeks. I mean, you think about this, that right there should cause people to pay attention. And yet here we have found two. I think they seem to be linked back to the same CCP or Chinese connected group. How many of these do you think are across the country? If you just had to guess, how many?
I'm really at a loss to guess because after the first one, everyone was asking, that can't be the only one. So now we found the second. It's, as you say, it could be a very large number. If I were to guess, I'd say about 10 or so, but I don't know. But I do know that Chinese researchers are studying what they call specific ethnic genetic attacks, which are attacks with pathogens that will leave the Chinese immune, but sicken and kill everybody else. So we know that they're designing these diseases to hit us. And that means it's not like COVID. COVID hit Chinese and it hit everybody else. But this will be a disease that Chinese people won't be subject to.
In our final moments here, let's talk about the data centers. I saw you tweeting about that earlier this week. NVIDIA is going to work with China. We're building all these data centers. We got Chinese technology on top of our humongous, Christmas tree, utility poles, towers. I mean, these guys could turn us off at any point, not to mention Dr. Peter Vincent Price sat at this very desk in 2018 and said, hey, a week before Vostok 18, which was, as you know, the largest military exercise in world history with China and Russia, a week before that, he said at this desk, former CIA analyst Peter Price said, well, a week before that went down, they did Operation Dragonfly, where China and Russia were inside our grid. I'm sure we're perhaps inside their grid, but we tend to have not a first strike mentality. I think a lot of times, certainly Russia does. But you talk about the ability to turn things on or off, and the chips in the cranes that move all of these goods onto the deck of the shipping facilities and cargo container facilities that bring us our food and so many of our important resources. I mean, they could just start throwing switches and everything could come to a halt.
Yes, the data centers are important because the Commerce Department late last year decided not to impose a ban on data centers installing Chinese-made equipment. And that means with this Chinese-made equipment in data centers, they can filch the data, but they could probably also remotely control them, which means sort of shutting them down or destroying them. So the Trump administration has, declined to impose a number of really important technology controls on Chinese equipment and services. And I hope people sort of get angry because, this is giving China our AI, our most important technology. The Trump administration is just letting the Chinese take it. This is wrong. This is wrong on every level, Brandon. And people should be yelling at the White House about this.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst, where do you rate the Trump administration on China?
You have to break it down because there are certain things where Trump gets a 10 and there are other things where he gets a 0. And, we're just talking about tech, he's getting a 0. I don't know whether any other way to put it. Now, there's some other things he's doing which are great with regard to China. But this tech issue is really, really important. So I hope that we can get to 10 on everything.
Marco Rubio's speech in Munich, it's gotten a lot of great play. A lot of people seem very pleased with that speech and how well he did. Even some people who have been kind of skeptics, you will, of him have to say hats off to him. Great speech. Do you think Marco Rubio has grown into the job? Do you think Marco is a different person than he was, say, 10 years ago in his worldview? And, I hear them talking about a presidential ticket of Vance and Rubio. And I'm thinking to myself, based on what I'm seeing, why would he be VP? I would rather see a Rubio and somebody else. I mean, I'm not endorsing candidates and I don't publicly endorse candidates, but speaking of watching him, he seems to be, of course, Secretary of State and all the other jobs they've got him doing. He seems to be far more growing into this job and into his outlook and worldview than anyone else in the administration right now. You want to comment on any of that?
Yeah, I don't know Marco Rubio 10 years ago, but Marco Rubio has had great views on foreign policy. And I think in the beginning of the Trump administration, he was hesitant to expressing it. But I think over time, this year, he has gotten more confidence. He's gotten the president's confidence, and Marco Rubio is being Marco Rubio. So I don't think that there was an evolution in his thinking. I think there's been an evolution, though, in his position in the administration, which has allowed him to talk about the things that he'd like to talk about. Remember, he comes from a Cuban family, and they know what communism is like. So he's been great on these issues across the board.
And then finally, China. Back to China's military. Where are we at? We have generals disappearing, generals being let go, generals under house arrest. What's the latest on that? And what does that tell you as far as where we're at with Xi Jinping having total control and preparing for war?
Yeah, generals are disappearing. They're being put under investigation, detained. I'm not sure they're being let go. That would be a good outcome for some of these guys. But what it tells me, though, we know that the Communist Party's Central Military Commission, which controls the military, had 7 members on it. Now it has only 2. It has Xi Jinping himself, and it has a political commissar, a general. So it has no operational officers, which means that for the first time in the history of the People's Republic, the operational chain of command has been severed. This means a couple things. It means in the short term, China's not going to actively go out and start a war because they don't have the capability to do it. They've got great planes. The pilots are still as good as they were. The submariners are still fantastic, but they're not being led. And I think that at least in the next couple months, this is sort of a sweet period. Now, 2 things. China can stumble into a war, even in this period, but also Xi Jinping has been getting rid of officers who are opposed to war, which has been what's going on over the last couple of years, which means that he's now got a very compliant officer corps, which means they're not going to be a break on him from doing something really dangerous. So after they've sort of replaced the chain of command, China, I think, is going to be far more dangerous than it's been. And it's going to be a period where we're at risk because I don't think that we appreciate what could happen. In the Pentagon right now, they say they've got a sense of urgency, but when you look at what they're doing, I just really, really concerned.
Gordon G. Chang, make sure you follow him right here at Gordon G. Chang. Get the G in there, at Gordon G. Chang. We sure appreciate our visits every few weeks, once a month. You're everywhere. I see you in so many places, and you have a consistent message, and you're warning the people, and I sure appreciate that. And say hello to your lovely wife, Lydia, for me and the crew here, will you?
I certainly will, and thank you so much, Brandon, and stay safe in this new year.
Yeah, you too, my friend. God bless you and your family. Gordon G. Chang checking in. Follow him at Gordon G. Chang. Always love our visits with Mr. Chang. We'll be right back after this short break.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
Joining me now is Shannon Everett with American Truckers. He's back because the problem is still a problem. Take a look at this video. Have you seen this, guys? Take a look at this. Can you even imagine? Joining me now is Shannon Everett. Shannon, where did this happen? What's the story behind this tragic situation?
Yeah, this crash happened in Indiana when the driver, who was already driving too fast, wasn't keeping his following distance from the truck in front of him, come upon that stopped truck, and instead of doing what everybody's trained to do, which is turn to the right, to the shoulder, to the trees, to the ditches, to the woods, all of that stuff. Unfortunately, drivers do have to make that sacrifice because we know that we have everybody else's lives, the responsibility of everyone else's lives in our hands. And so instead of choosing to bail to the right, he went to the left and went into oncoming traffic head on and killed a family. It was,
Four Amish people.
Dad.
4 Amish people.
That's right. That's right. And so how are these guys still on the road?
Yeah, that was my next question. That was actually my next question. How is it these guys are still on the road? Because I thought we had done a program on this over a year ago now, and we got the attention of Fox News, which keeps having you back on, and others. But I think we were one of the first national outlets to break some of this, and here we are, and it's still going on. What, Logan? Yeah, Duffy did a press conference on it after we were talking with you about it for a while. It finally, percolated to the top and got some attention, but it's still going on. How hard is this to get these people off the road?
Yeah, so I really appreciate your community, your listeners. Absolutely, y'all were on the front edge of this and have been with us in this fight ever since it started at that grassroots level. It's now a national story.
Right.
But that grassroots effort is important for everybody to understand, because your voice matters, and you getting involved and speaking up is how we get the attention of Duffy and how we get the executive order out of the president. And that's what we need right now. We need more people speaking up still, because the problem's not fixed. And that's because while Duffy has issued an interim final, well, it's now a final ruling. It's not interim. He's issued a final ruling that they can no longer issue non-domiciled CDLs to these illegal aliens who are in possession of these EAD cards, which still makes them an illegal alien. He has not revoked their licenses. So the FMCSA and the USDOT are aware that hundreds of thousands of commercial driver's licenses were illegally issued to illegal aliens. And through their own guidance. So the FMCSA in 2019 gave guidance to state DMVs and said, hey, y'all give these CDLs to these illegal aliens. Okay. Now, Duffy comes into office and he's like, what the hell have y'all done? He takes away their ability to do that, but nobody has revoked the licenses. And so they're still, we estimate, my estimate is 876,000. JB Hunt put out a report that enumerated it at around 600,000. The FMCSA has admitted it's at least 200,000 of these guys still on the road. So while they're not issuing any more, your family's still driving next to hundreds of thousands of these guys every day. And I think that's completely unacceptable.
Yeah, well, I would agree 100% with you. Completely unacceptable. Let's go back to your report. This is over at your website, your Twitter feed, which folks should follow. I'm going to give it here in a minute, but I want to scroll through real quick because I saw this post today on my own, and then I see it's over at your website, and it might give us an indication of where we're going with the economy as well. Take a look and listen at this. Here we go.
Continue to be tight. Tender rejections are at 14.01%. This is a sign that capacity is not loosening up, despite the fact that weather is well behind us. In fact, last week was one of the best weeks of weather that we've had in some time, and yet tender rejections stayed extremely, extremely high compared to where they've been in many years. What I think is really interesting is that we are starting to see that as conditions tighten up, we're hearing that shippers are finding it harder and harder to rely upon their carriers to take freight at the existing rates. We're also finding that brokers are talking a lot about the fact that they're having to pay up significantly for spot market capacity. If conditions hold, if we see strong tender rejections continue for the next couple of weeks, it is a very clear sign that this market is not going to suddenly flip into the kinds of conditions that we've known over the last couple of years. This market is completely different. Where the fact that this is happening mid-February should be noted by everybody that's in freight. This is very atypical. February is arguably one of the weakest months of the year. January, you end up with a lot of sort of returns that drive a lot of the market, gift card season that drives a lot of the market. February doesn't really have a ton of things that are real catalysts, and we don't really see catalysts in freight until we enter March, where you start seeing the spring shipping season. Things like gardening, construction, produce, those all start in March, and then beverages heat up as we get into the later portions of the spring as the weather gets hotter. Things like beer and water bottles and sodas and all that stuff does peak as we head into the summer. And so the fact that this is happening in February is the strongest sign that the Great Freight Recession is clearly over with. And I think it's something that shippers should take note. It's going to be harder and harder to rely upon your motor carriers to honor those existing rates. If you've done an RFP this season, you should expect that the carriers that bid these RFPs are probably going to expect some kinds of rate concession as you head into the year, because they probably had an orientation of thinking that freight would be softer than it just turned out to be. Therefore, prepare to ensure that you have some backups built into your routing guides.
So the economy, is that a sign the economy's doing better?
We are seeing some increased demand, a slight increase in demand. But really what we're seeing is the effects of immigration enforcement on the trucking industry. You know, if you go back to September, when our team had the opportunity to brief the executives of ICE, 5 days after that briefing, after we explained exactly what was taking place in the trucking industry, they conducted Operation Guardian in the western port of Oklahoma, where they pulled in 500 trucks off of Interstate 40 in a random inspection. And of the 500, 120 of those trucks were put out of service and the drivers deported for being illegal immigrants in possession of these illicit non-domicile CDLs.
So out of 500, did you say 120?
120. You can go back and research that with Operation Guardian. They've since conducted, I think, an additional 4 operations at all of their ports of entry in the south, north, and east, and have found the same problem at all of their ports. And so ICE is now fully aware of what's taking place, and they're focused on this population. And I got to say, the interim final ruling is good. The stopping of the issuance of the non-domiciled CDLs, but the lack of revocation is a serious concern for everyone. And Homeland Security, under the Secretary Noem and the leadership of Director Todd Lyons at ICE, have been doing a phenomenal job. Really, what he's describing in that video is the result of the work that's being done at the Department of Homeland Security to crack down on this illegal immigration. And so we need more of that. We've got a brochure that we've been sharing, and that talks about some of the state initiatives. If the federal government's going to continue to fail us at the FMCSA and at the USDOT by not revoking illegal CDLs that they told everybody to issue, then we have to take matters into our own hands at the state level. And the way that we can do that is that state law enforcement officers can cooperate with ICE through a 287G program. And so whoever's responsible for commercial motor vehicle enforcement, their leadership signs a 287G with ICE, and then their officers are deputized and trained to enforce immigration laws. And that's how you put an end to this. Because even though the USDOT and FMCSA want to allow these guys to continue to have these CDLs, they do not have lawful status. And the minute that they're inspected or stopped, the driver is going to get deported.
Well, I just did the math on it. Correct me if I'm wrong. But if you pull over 500 trucks randomly, and 120 are guys that are illegal CDL drivers and are deported, that's 24%.
We do believe there's a higher concentration on Interstate 40 because it's a main artery coming out of the California market. And California is one of the worst perpetrators or one of the worst ones that proliferated the issuance of all these CDLs. And so I do think that that's heavy there in the state of Oklahoma. So definitely the states along those corridors that are going to California need to be paying a lot more attention. But I think you'll see those percentages decline in other markets.
All right, let's go to another one. Here's another sad story. Here we go.
This morning, new information about the suspect who killed a beloved educator in Savannah Monday. Authorities say the crash occurred near the Truman Parkway as a man fled a traffic stop involving immigration enforcement. Department of Homeland Security has identified the suspect as Oscar Vasquez Lopez of Guatemala. Officials say he was issued a final order of removal by a federal judge back in 2024. They say he entered the U.S. illegally at an unknown time and location. Lopez now faces multiple charges, including vehicular homicide. Investigators say he drove away from ICE officers before the crash. In a statement, Homeland Security's Assistant Secretary saying these dangerous tactics are putting people's lives at risk. Fleeing from and resisting federal law enforcement is not only a crime, but extraordinarily dangerous. The victim, Dr. Davis, was a special education teacher at Hess K-8, located less than a mile from the crash site.
Pitiful. And we got stories of illegals killing Americans over and over, vehicular homicide, sex trafficking, sexual assault, murder, nonstop. We got this Epstein thing of children. Makes your stomach turn. And yet, I hate to say it, all I hear about when I walk through the room and see some of these news stations is Nancy Guthrie. Isn't this a wonderful distraction from what's really going on and impacting everyday Americans? 4 Amish people just killed by an illegal. I mean, it's nonstop. But all of this emphasis on Nancy Guthrie. And of course, again, this is where you got to say, I hope she comes back safely. And I do. But I'm so sick of our media taking one story and writing it for months and months on end, while all of these other stories that impact every one of us. Now, Nancy Guthrie does not impact me. It does not impact you. None of us are impacted by Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. I'm sorry it happened. I pray she's safely returned, but it does not impact me or my family's safety or these children. And yet we have all of these other urgent stories being ignored, and I'm sick of it. And I would think that I'm not the only one. I just happen to have the guts to say it. Comment?
I would think one of those cases, one of those stories that we really need the attention on of the national media and your listeners is the fact that there's no accountability in these crashes. Now, I don't know who the shipper is and who the broker is on the crash in Indiana with the Amish family that was killed. We should know that. It's a travesty that we don't know that. They were quick to tell you who the trucking company was. They're quick to tell you who the driver was and throw them on the bus. But who hired that company? Who hired the illegal alien to haul that freight? Who was the broker that gave him that load? And so everyone should understand that right now, with all of these crashes, with the egregiousness that's taking place in the trucking industry by licensing a bunch of illegal truck drivers, that the U.S. DOT and the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration just issued an amicus brief to the Supreme Court requesting that the brokers who give them freight receive immunity from damages in the crashes. That Supreme Court case is Montgomery versus Caribe, C-A-R-I-B-E, and the United States government sided on the side of the brokers that brokers should receive immunity from tort claims when it comes to these tragic crashes. Now, not every crash involves illegal aliens, but I can tell you this, every crash that has illegal aliens involves brokers. And so that applies to this story. And so if you look at all these major crashes that we've had over the last, since this new administration, it takes 2 to 3 years for these crashes to adjudicate and for these families to be compensated for their damages, whether it's for the injuries or for the fatalities. Well, most of these trucking companies only carry a minimum federal requirement of $750,000 worth of insurance. Almost all of these carriers that are operating using illegal aliens have no balance sheets. They're all ghost chameleon operations that are structured and built to just shut down and reopen under a new name in case of a disaster or calamity. And so, what would happen, Brandon, if you were in a wreck tomorrow, and something happened to one of your family members, you would pursue the driver. He would flee to his home country. So there's no accountability for him. You would sue the trucking company. You would have access to an insurance policy, maybe if he has insurance. Most cases they do, but only for $750,000. So if like in the case of Indiana, if there's four people dead that have lost their lives, lost their ability to earn income for the rest of their lives and take care of their families, do you think $750,000 is going to scratch that? No, it's not. But that's all you're going to get because the company, like in the case of the one in Indiana, has already been put out of service. It's going to be defunct now. It's gone. So there won't be any pursuit of the company in their balance sheet because I'm sure they don't have one. And now USDOT and FMCSA want that broker who gave them the load to have immunity. I would argue that the profiteers of this entire ecosystem are the billion-dollar brokerages that are giving them the loads. Those are the exact people we need to be going after, not giving them immunity.
And this is what you tweeted about today. The American people have been sold out by the ATA, brokers, and FMCSA. That's what you're talking about right now, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So a lot of people are getting rich.
The fact that multi-billion-dollar operations have captured the regulatory lobbying organization, which is the American Trucking Association, and they have the ear of all of our legislators.
There you go. So a lot of people getting really, really rich, but apparently they will not be held account if they are involved in knowingly hiring illegal alien drivers that kill and maim people. Is that what you're telling me?
That's right.
So once again, we're seeing that the laws in this country which I believe by and large, the laws in America are written by criminals for criminals. The laws in America are largely written by criminals for criminals. White-collar criminals are writing the laws that allow other white-collar criminals to get away with a lot. And then, of course, trickles down to the non-white-collar criminals. That's my opinion, because why else would you allow this kind of stuff to stand? It's really what Frederick Bastiat talked about in his classic book, The Law. Elected officials that get involved for the enrichment of themselves and their special interests. And he called it plundering. They will plunder for themselves and their special interests. How is that not breaking at least the moral law, the laws of nature and nature's God? Rewarding lawlessness. Being involved in doing things and setting up things you know is going to cause damage to people, harm to people, death to people. Where is their fiduciary responsibility to law and order, which is the function and purpose of government, Romans 13, to make a stable and just society, reward the righteous, punish the wicked, make a stable society for those who obey the God-ordained laws. Not that every law by man is ordained. They can pass a lot of legislation that has nothing to do with God's character and nature. But in our republic, that's what they're supposed to do, according to our republic, is our laws are not to violate the character and nature of God. And the Bible's very clear about not taking advantage of the poor. It's very clear about not starving people from their duly wage because you give the work to people who are illegal, or you use the system to enrich people. The Bible speaks against exploiting the poor. It would also be against exploiting the average person. Thou shalt not steal. And what are these multinational, humongous corporations doing if not rigging the system so they can make billions of dollars at the expense of the safety and livelihood of the citizens? I mean, I can see it no other way, in my opinion. Can you?
No, not at all. And that's exactly what's taking place in the trucking industry. You have multi-billion-dollar businesses hiding behind the presumption of immunity to exploit and force illegal immigrants, slaves, into doing their work, and they're bidding for them. And that's resulted in taking all of the market share away from our safe, properly structured and with proper investments in safety and technologies that we see in all of our American trucking companies. The ones that are spending the money on the safety, that are on the technology, cannot compete with this new illicit ecosystem.
Okay, you just said something interesting. So some of these illegal drivers are really slaves. Have they been brought here? Have they been brought here?
We call it forced labor.
So some of them come here against their will?
They're being worked against their will. And so they're being forced to work beyond their required hours of service. And we do believe that some of them are being forced to come here and to stay here against their will.
So some of them even were kidnapped, if you will, rounded up and brought here to work and didn't even want to come here.
I don't know exactly that might be the case. I know from a forced labor position, they're being forced to work. They're being told what they're going to be paid, and there are examples of their family and stuff receiving threats when they don't do what they're told to do.
So, okay, so now that kind of changes the picture a little bit, because now you're thinking about the guy who somehow finds himself in this position, whether he was forced to come here or whether he came here illegally. Of course, that was his first mistake. But once he got here, he's now being threatened. His family's being threatened unless he takes a job for sounds like peanuts compared to what he should be being paid if he had gone through all the training like American truckers. I mean, that kind of changes the whole scene. So now we have people that are committing crimes, but in one essence, they also, some of them are potentially victims of this criminal system. It sounds like a criminal network. Are there organized criminal gangs involved in this? Is this cartels? Who's involved in this?
It's absolutely organized crime from the top all the way to the bottom. And so, there's a lot of drivers coming forward now telling us the stories we're gathering those, but I think this public's going to be shocked to understand the level of nefarious activity and depravity that has taken place in the trucking industry when we have reduced all of the standards to absolutely nothing, and we've turned it. Essentially, our American Trucking Association has turned our trucking industry into the wild, wild west.
Okay, so what percentage of this is also, if it's organized crime is involved, what percentage of this has to do with transporting drugs and human trafficking?
Oh, I believe it's all connected.
And where are our politicians?
So I think you can tell our movement was very strong with the executive branch. The administration is fully supportive. Duffy's been fully supportive of a crackdown. Where we've seen a problem has been in the legislative side of it, and that's because the American Trucking Association has captured our regulatory environment. We have regulatory capture in the trucking industry. We have a trucking association that spends $50 million a year lobbying their positions with their dollars, and those people are fighting against us for revoking these non-domiciled CDLs, and they have the ears of the legislators, and right now the legislators have sided with the American Trucking Association against the American people.
Have you received any threats or any letters or emails or phone calls or voicemails that basically is telling you back off, knock this off?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My movement started with the death threats, and so yes, they've continued.
And you believe that's some of this organized cartel gangs and what mafia type groups?
We know who it is. So the teams are aware, but at the end of the day, life is a spiritual battle. It's much more than flesh. My God called me to this fight, and so he's going to have to call me off of it.
Yeah, amen. And we'll ask our audience to pray for your safety and that of your team. But you're telling me in closing here that your group is receiving threats for the light that you're shining on this darkness. You guys
Absolutely.
are receiving threats that this is highly organized and it's criminal, and it involves basically what is forced labor, slave labor, drug trafficking, and human trafficking, right?
That's correct.
And yet, you would think there'd be congressional hearings on this. Are we going to get any congressional hearings on this on Capitol Hill?
I think you will find congressional hearings this year. I hope and pray that we do.
And hopefully the media will cover it and talk about it.
The media's been doing a good job. I think you can tell that, pretty much all the mainstream media has been having us on. We've been allowed to share our voice and our position on things. Unfortunately, the legislators listen to the lobbyists. They don't listen to the mainstream media. And so I just keep praying for a breakthrough with our congressional leaders. I think I honestly think they don't know what to believe. And so I believe that once they have a complete understanding of the issue, they'll do the right thing.
Let's pray that's the case. But you know what? Money is the love of money is the root of all evil. And some of these people, you have to wonder how much of them are being paid to turn a blind eye. Any idea?
Yes. No, I don't. I just know that they're, I believe they'll do the right thing when they have the right information.
Well, let's give them the right information. You guys can go there and find it and share it with your elected officials. There you go. American Truckers, they're ATU Truckers. ATU Truckers is their handle on X. Shannon, as always, thanks for being with us.
Yep. Thank you, sir.
Wow. Very important story, folks. Shouldn't be dangerous to take a trip with your family. Shouldn't have to risk being killed. I mean, driving is dangerous enough without what we've been seeing here in these videos. And think about that. 500 trucks pulled over and 120 of them. 500 random trucks pulled over and 120 are guys that shouldn't even have a CDL who are illegal who get deported. We'll be right back. Go to worldviewtalk.com. Get your satellite phone like I have, because you know what? China is in on our power grid. That is a matter of proven fact. If you want to have communications with your loved ones, your family, your children, maybe your spouse travels, maybe you have a child away at college, You want communication should the grid go down. That's why you need a satellite phone, worldviewtalk.com. But look what else they have. They also have solar generators. I have one of their solar generators. I have the Delta Echo 400, a solar generator. So I can, of course, charge my satellite phone. I can run my coffee pot. I can run my whole house if I want to. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com, or use that number, 1-866-738-3224. They have very friendly operators that will explain to you their products, but you can explain to them what it is you're desiring to acquire. How much electricity are you wanting to generate with this solar generator? Well, they'll tell you what size you need. worldviewtalk.com or 1-866-738-3224. All right, guys, I want you to go over to worldviewtimes.com. You know, we have Worldview Radio. That's radio, obviously. We have Worldview Times. That's your print, our articles. And then we have Worldview Tube, obviously, TV. You get to one, you'll find them all. See, because you got, obviously, radio, TV, news. So look at this article we put up today. History's biggest heist, the next big crisis, and why it matters to every American. I talked about it tonight in my Worldview Report commentary. There's a new book out, and I've just ordered the book. It's written by Justin Haskins and Jack McFerrin. I've ordered the book. I'm going to be reading it and bringing it more information to you, but it's really based on a look at the Great Taking, And so you might want to refresh your memory. Now, we've talked about the Great Taking, I think, now for about 2 years or so. But just to refresh your memory, before we have Michael Weiner come on here and comment, watch a little bit of this video clip from the documentary on the Great Taking. Watch this.
I think that we're very close to this collapse being triggered. What are the indications for that? Well, most profoundly, what has been done to interest rates and where they are now, and the scale of the insolvencies that are out there. They're not being discussed. They're being covered up. The only way that the financial system has not collapsed is that there is a big hidden hand injecting lots of created money directly into the financial markets, holding them up right now, as well as allowing institutions to believe they have downside risk by buying protection in the derivatives market, the combination of those things. So this support, the hidden hand as I call it, can be withdrawn at the time of their choosing. But we're getting late in this process given what's already happened to the interest rates. The other indication of timing is the bank resolution, the documents of the Bank Resolution Authority in Europe. Their planning cycle documents were mandating all of the globally systemically important banks to be ready for solvent wind down at the end of last year, 2022. Now, what they mean by solvent wind down is not wind down of the entire bank on a solvent basis. It will be parts of the bank that will remain solvent. But they've literally mandated that they have to be ready, the biggest banks, to go flat on all of their derivatives positions in a controlled way suddenly. So they've prepared for that. That is operational as of the end of last year. Now, in this year's planning cycle document, they are saying that they are on track to have completed all their work by the end of this year, 2023. So these are indications. To give you another idea of the seriousness of this, they've been running these trilateral exercises with Britain and the EU and the US for 6 of the 7 past years. I think they may have missed a year during COVID, but in these exercises, from the U.S. side, the participants are the U.S. Treasury Secretary, the Chairman of the Federal Reserve, the Chairman of the FDIC, the heads of all these entities in this exercise, which I've never seen before with anything. So they're very, very serious about this. And these exercises are about assuring the cross-border transfer of the collateral when the banks are put into wind down.
David Webb from The Great Taking. And by the way, folks, you can go over to their website. They have a website. It's called thegreattaking.com, ironically enough, thegreattaking.com. And you can actually download a book there absolutely free of charge. I want to read to this to you and then bring Michael Weiner in. I have another clip to play as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about China dumping treasuries as well. All of this seems to be lining up. I don't give financial advice. I give financial opinion, but my opinion is you better be doing your homework, because a lot of people, I think, are going to be caught flat-footed, and they're going to, I'm afraid, many people are going to lose much of their life's work because they don't realize how, well, apparently the game has been rigged. And isn't it always a game that's rigged against the average American? And many will, I'm afraid, say, well, if I had only known. Well, that's one of the objectives we have here at our broadcast, is to help you stay aware of what's happening and apply a Christian worldview to all areas of life. Obviously, that includes economics, your property. The Bible has a lot to say about money and wealth and saving. Money isn't the root of all evil. It's the love of money. Money is just a medium of exchange. Money is to be used to provide for our family, be a blessing to others, and further the gospel. And we, of course, as humans that live in a natural world, we need a medium of exchange to buy the goods and services we need to sustain ourselves. But it's also a biblical concept to put away, to save. And sadly, many will lose what they have saved for so many years because they didn't realize how the game was rigged against them. Here's from The Great Taking. Look at this. A little PDF book you can download for free. There are now no property rights to securities held in book entry form in any jurisdiction globally. In the grand scheme to confiscate all collateral, dematerialization of securities was the essential first step. The planning and efforts began over a half a century ago. That there was some great strategic purpose behind dematerialization is evidenced by the fact that the CIA was assigned the mission. Do I have your attention now, folks? You trust the CIA? Isn't that the same agency involved in so many horrible things, including what many say was the removal of John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy, from this planet? The CIA, were they not involved in at least some of their folks being there at the table when the COVID pandemic simulation was run before the pandemic? So you think the CIA has your best interest at heart, your finances, my friends? The book, The Great Taking, goes on to say, the project leader was William B. Dinser Jr., a career CIA operative. By his admission, his own written memoir, he started his career working to establish anti-communist student organizations in Europe with the backing of the CIA. Now, I have no problem with anti-communist organizations. I'm an anti-communist myself. The CIA had arranged his draft deferment. He was then specifically assigned to the CIA and worked there openly for 5 years. Subsequently, he was transferred from the CIA to the task force, which created the Agency for International Development, AID. He became special assistant to the first head of AID. Thereafter, special assistant to the U.S. coordinator of the Alliance for Progress, which was active in Latin America. He was then appointed executive secretary of the Clay Committee, which lobbied for congressional appropriations for aid. After the 3 years as director of aid in Peru, he was named deputy U.S. ambassador to the Organization of American States. He goes on to say, look at this. Then strangely, even though he had no background in any aspect of banking or finance, he was appointed New York State Superintendent of Banks by, wait for it, Nelson Rockefeller. This came after his nomination to the newly formed New York State Council of Economic Advisors by its chairman, former head of the World Bank. Oh, really? The World Bank, huh? Eugene Black. Interestingly, Black's father had been chairman of the, wait for it, Federal Reserve in 1933. Within 2 years of assuming his position as New York State Bank Superintendent, Dinser was named chairman and CEO of the newly formed, listen now, Depository Trust Corporation. Do you guys know what that is? The DTC? Well, you do if you watched my Worldview Report commentary tonight at the end of the newscast. a post he held for the next 22 years through the entire process of dematerialization. In the late 1960s, something called the Bank and Securities Industry Committee, BASIC for an acronym, had been formed to find a solution to the paperwork crisis. It seemed the burden of handling physical stock certificates had suddenly become too great, so much so that the New York Stock Exchange had suspended trading some days. Lawmakers then urged the government to step into the process. The BASIC report recommended changing from processing physical stock certificates to book entry transfers of ownership via computerized entries in a trust company that would hold the underlying certificates, immobilized, I should say. The trust company would develop the necessary computer and other systems. I happened to meet with network engineers of DTC 40 years ago in my first job out of school. Was this paperwork crisis manufactured in order to provide an objective, an imperative for dematerialization? Consider that DCT did not begin operations until 1973 and that no significant degree of dematerialization was achieved for many years. However, somehow, during this intervening period, stock exchanges continue to function in spite of escalating trade volumes without the elimination of certificates, especially with the aid of computerization. It could be done and was done. DCT eventually became the model for the Central Securities Depository and Central Clearing Counterparty, the purpose of which will be examined later. And at the end of the day, what's going on here, folks? Apparently, all of the financial instruments most of you hold, whether IRA and other securities, apparently a lot of it is actually being held through this depository. Do you understand really how it works? Here's one more clip, and then Michael Weiner will respond. Watch this.
America is in trouble. The Federal Reserve can be summarized in 3 words. It's a scam. I never realized it was the most profoundly corrupt institution in the world, pretending to be honorable.
The custodians are empowered to borrow the securities out of the pool without any limit at all.
And it's a partnership between the bankers and the politicians, and they create money for all the citizens of that country.
The secured creditors have absolute assurance that they will keep the client collateral in the event of insolvency. And this is the shocker, not your insolvency, but insolvency of the people that secretly used your securities as collateral.
So in a sense, what they're doing is converting your property, your assets, into money.
They don't need your money. They can create unlimited money. It is about subjugation of people.
Who was it? Kissinger said a long time ago, if you want to control people, you control food. If you want to control nations, you control oil. If you want to control the world, you control money. And I think that's the plan. And right now, it seems like they're using the climate change as the mechanism to be able to step in and take control.
So I've written this book, The Great Taking, to put on the table a very sophisticated structure designed to take essentially all financial collateral globally.
Everything you want to do in life gets translated at some point into a monetary value. So if what you're using as a monetary value is not your property, you have none. You have nothing. You are a slave.
We're in a hybrid war that is open-ended.
The average person is doomed. They have to wake up. They have to learn a little bit about what the real world is about. They have to stop buying into the myth.
All right, joining me now is Michael Weiner. Michael, welcome back to the broadcast. Thank you for being with us. Most people are not aware that their securities, their IRA, these other things could be at great risk, that in the small print, they may not own it, including even their own bank deposits. Here in this article at worldviewtimes.com, The centralized entity is identified as the Depository Trust Company, or DTC. What are your thoughts on what we're talking about, what you just heard, when it comes to people's, say, bank account or, say, their IRA?
Well, let's go into the real foundation of this, which is really what brilliantly Mr. Webb brings up through the Great Taking. This has been going on all the way back to before Roosevelt. But what Roosevelt did brilliantly was the idea was American people didn't trust paper money prior to 1933. Most of the men carried change purses because they carried gold coins and silver coins. The plan of the Great Taking, the plan of these banks and these imperialists was to force you into the bank. Way to force you into the bank is changing your money, changing your financial freedom. First, they got rid of gold. For 40 years, they got rid of gold. Why did they make gold a felony, for goodness sakes? A DUI isn't even a felony. It's a misdemeanor. Why did they make a gold coin a felony? Because they wanted to force you in to the Great Taking, the bank system that ultimately uses your money, collateralizes your money. They created a derivative market, which is a multi-trillion-dollar marketplace that's all smoke and mirrors. So we're all stuck in this big malaise of banking. We're stuck with credit cards so they can track all that. They control just about everything that we have. Now they want to go digital because they want to protect us, as they say. Going digital will be the final straw of the nail in your coffin. When you talk about the situation of what's going on, low-hanging fruit, we talked about it before. What is the lowest hanging fruit you have besides your bank account? Your IRA, your 401k. Why do you think they got rid of pensions? Because they were good. They did 401ks, they did IRAs, and guess what? They got a roadmap to get those. They can lock you out of that faster than you can say one. And they will. And then they'll nationalize it just like when they created Social Security, and you'll have zip. That's why Reagan created precious metals IRAs, because you have a barrier from them, which you don't have in any paper asset in an IRA or a 401k if you're in that age or position to get rid of it or move some of it out. So you better watch out on that.
Look at this. When you talk, look at this headline from the Red State. The next big crash could wipe out everyone except Wall Street.
Exactly. And then you'll all be a pawn. They will control every dime you have, and you'll march in place. That's what you see going on in Europe. They can't even retire in Europe without getting permission. I mean, they ultimately will have digital banking, digital currency, and, fortunately, unfortunately, cryptocurrencies, all these different means of exchanges are not giving you financial freedom. They're giving them financial control. So what do you own that offers you financial freedom? The people that we have been buying gold, that Brandon's been talking about, gold and silver for years. Why? It's the financial freedom that the founders of this nation put us under. Why did they do that? Because they didn't want the people running the government to control us. They wanted us to control them, and they got rid of that in 33, and we sat around like sheeps and allow it to happen, and we're sitting around right now, and we're allowing it to happen again. It's going on. I don't know if there's a way to stop it other than creating your own barrier or your own buffer. That's what we do with precious metals ownership. That's what we do by protecting your IRA, because if you don't do it, it's going to be too late. I don't care if you have 20, 30, $50 million buried. It won't help you because they'll just sit back and take control of it.
Well,
and you will be
Here it is. This is from redstate.com. As of this writing, the DTC retains custody of more than 1.4 million active securities issues valued at $87.1 trillion. Including securities issued in the U.S. in more than 131 countries and territories. Although it sounds too far-fetched to be true, Americans don't actually own the stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and other assets held in common retirement vehicles such as Roth IRAs and 401k accounts. In reality, Americans own what are called security entitlements. This is a significant, albeit sinister development that could have far-reaching consequences when the next economic crisis occurs. Quote, in a major financial crisis, investors' assets can be frozen and seized to absorb losses at failing firms. A scenario that has already happened on a smaller scale under existing rules and can be made far easier if emergency powers are invoked. In other words, big banks will be insulated from major losses whenever the next big crash arrives. No, make no mistake, this is not legal theory. It has actually already occurred. September 2008, Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy due to over-leveraged positions in the subprime housing market. At the time, Lehman was more than $600 billion in debt. Eventually, the case was dragged through the bankruptcy courts. When Lehman Brothers filed bankruptcy, its custodian, J.P. Morgan Chase, made sure it was at the front of the line when Lehman's assets were distributed. Ordinary investors who had accounts with Lehman were simply out of luck. They had to wait years to be reimbursed, although many were only awarded a fraction of what they were owed. As Haskins and McFerrin note in their new book, the legal framework that will govern the next major financial crisis is already in place, and it was explicitly designed to protect large institutions alone, end quote. Mike?
You know, when they made this movie called Margin Call, and I really recommend everybody watches that movie, it was about Lehman. And what's really interesting in that entire movie, if you listen to that entire movie, at no point in that movie when they're trying to save Lehman Brothers and they're trying to keep it afloat, did they mention any concern for the investors? Quite oppositely, they said use them. Take their money. Even though they knew they were selling them worthless securities, they said sell them. All for the betterment of the company, keeping the company afloat. This is not a joke. People don't want to pay attention to it till it's too late. And right now, with bail-in that already exists, part of the Dodd-Frank law, they've already got their fails. They've got their parachutes all built. What's your parachute? What do you have? Do you have it in your retirement plan? You put it away for like 25 years, 35 years, 40 years, tens of millions of dollars, a few $100,000, $100,000, whatever the amount is. Do you really control it? The only person who smelled this out was Ronald Reagan in 1984 and 85 when he created precious metals IRAs. He wanted something that the government did not have direct access to. It's the same thing as the gold you own privately. They do not have direct access to it if you own the numismatic metal. Now, some people don't like it because they say it costs a little bit more. It's also worth a little bit more. So what's the difference? You know, you've got to look at programming yourself to be one-dimensional for your family. Because if you do not, you will become a sheep, and it's going to be too late.
Well, this article says that. This should send shivers down the spine of every American, because the bottom line is that when the next big crash comes, whether it be months or years from now, big banks will be hunky-dory, while everyday Americans will get absolutely hammered.
You're right.
You know, interesting enough, I was watching an interview today with one of the guys. I think it was Josh Haskins who helped write this latest book. He was saying, you know, that's why hard assets are so important. Gold, silver, land, rental houses. Those are so important because he said the guy was being interviewed by my friend Alex Newman, that those come with a lot of private property laws. There's a lot of private property laws that help protect those hard assets. And he was saying that, I don't give financial advice, he said, and I don't give financial advice either. But he was saying that people ought to understand that with these kind of securities, how the laws are written. People may say, well, that shouldn't be legal. Well, I'm sorry. They should say, they may say that's not moral. Yeah, I know. They may say that's not ethical. Well, I know. But if the laws are written that way, and you go to court, what are you going to argue? What's your attorney going to argue? And he was saying in the interview, the gentleman was saying that people need to understand there are a lot more laws to protect private property when you're talking about land, houses, hard assets. You agree?
Absolutely. And I don't want to get too biblical here, but in the portions in the Bible, they talk about gold, silver, land, and cattle. They don't talk
gold,
about mutual
silver,
funds.
land, cattle,
they
and
don't
houses.
talk about bonds.
Those five
they
things.
Don't talk, and how correct that advice was. But if you think about this, when we deal with financial planners who tell their clients, no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. It's the same. Picture this big bank. Instead of an individual man or woman saying, we're going to take care of your money, picture this big bank like a vacuum cleaner sucking it up. Because once they got their hands on it, they don't necessarily have to let it go. Read the fine print. Who actually owns your stocks? Who actually owns your mutual funds? The companies, not you. I mean, it's hilarious when we have to sit down at times and deal with people that sit back and say, well, my advisor. Well, I always keep saying to people repetitively, this is your money. It's not my money. It's not your advisor's money. The only person that loses in the world is you. And I assure you, knowing as long as I've known Brandon and Melissa House, and as long as I know myself over the last 46 years, though Brandon thinks it's 446 years, I assure you I'm eating. So is he when this happens, because you're going to get blindsided, and the people who are pulling the strings will continue to do that, and the people on the other side are just going to have to listen to the change. And the biggest devaluation, people say to me, what's the devaluation going to be like? It already happened. In 1971, we had money. Prior to June of 71, if you went into the bank with a $100 bill, they had to give you immediately $100 in gold and silver. It said, pay the bearer. 2 days later, when Nixon changed the law, you went into the bank, they gave you a newspaper and pointed you to the picnic bench. You got nothing. You got a devaluation from something to nothing overnight. And don't you get it? You've been bartering since 1971. It's monopoly money. It doesn't matter.
And it's only going to get worse, Michael, because Business Insider says, here's what smart people are saying about China's push to cut holdings of U.S. Treasury debt. So as China and others don't want to buy our debt, then they have to print the money. And I keep reading the reports, Michael, in closing here, of how much more debt our government's buying. Our Treasury buying more and more debt, right?
Correct. They're buying our debt, and people have an opportunity. This is a quiet before the storm. Protect your IRAs. The biggest part of your life for some of you. Protect your money. Create your own stockpile. It's like Brandon always talks about, with all the assets he offers you, from the satellite phones to all the food products to all the various things that support your independence. We are all about personal independence. And that's what I applaud Worldview Weekend for, being about your personal independence. And either you want to do something about it, because when the bottom falls in, my people are going to be okay. The other people out there are going to be calling up their brokers. And I can tell you, every time there's a crash, I can't get my broker on the phone. I can't get the reason you can't get them is because they're told not to answer. Literally. Wait till they hit bottom and then talk to you when you're stuck.
Worldviewgold.com. Get your free, no obligation packet of information. I don't give financial advice. I give financial opinion. My opinion is you should get the information, do your own due diligence, and decide what to do with your IRA and other assets. Now that you've learned more about this corporation in America. And again, if you want to read the full article, it's over there at worldviewtimes.com tonight. And now you've learned a lot tonight about the Depository Trust Company. Again, your free packet, no obligation, worldviewgold.com or 1-877-864-1072, 1-877-864-1072. Michael, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much. Say hello to Dolly. She's getting her coat soon. Thank you.
A coat. She's got a coat coming.
She's going to be a fashion gal. Trust me.
We'll look forward to showing that off. She's over here on her pet bed, sound asleep. So she'll look forward to the coat.
There you go.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you, Michael. All right, guys, take a look at this headline. insulin resistance may be driving 12 types of cancer. That's what the researchers are saying. 12 types of cancer. Wow. Insulin sensitivity is a known driver of diabetes progression and other health complications. Now, insulin resistance has been linked to a 25% higher risk of 12 different types of cancers. Joining me now is Dr. Lana. Dr. Lana, what are your thoughts on this headline today?
Hello. Well, insulin resistance, is a pre-diabetic condition, and then that leads to diabetes. And bottom line, that is because the cell membranes are getting clogged with diet, lifestyle, our food, becoming overweight, poor lifestyle choices, environmental toxins, viruses, variants, medications, all of that can clog our cell membranes. And so insulin resistance is when the glucose, you've got the insulin, and the insulin is taking the glucose up to the cell membrane, but the glucose can't get inside the cell because the membranes are clogged. And no one is really explaining that to patients. They're just saying, you've got a pre-diabetic condition, or you now have type 2 diabetes, or you're insulin resistant. So you've got, metabolic syndrome. In other words, people typically are overweight. And they've been told that by their doctor that they're either pre-diabetic or diabetic. Hence, years ago, you've had the metformin came on the scene, a drug for type 2 diabetes and polycystic ovary syndrome. And now that is morphed into the Wegovy, the Mounjaros, the Ozempics, and the GLP-1 drugs that were once for metabolic syndrome and diabetes, type 2, especially in pre-diabetic conditions, to now they're for weight loss. But what they do when people lose weight and they start eating healthier, that helps to unclog those cell membranes, and that allows the insulin to usher in the glucose inside the cells. And you don't have the glucose circling the bloodstream like you do. Because when you get that metabolic syndrome or that insulin resistance, the body now is the cells start to go rogue because you've got all that glucose running through the body. And they are showing that it's you saw the list of kidney cancer and uterine cancer and pancreatic cancer when that insulin resistance environment, presents itself in the body. And it's largely diet, lifestyle, toxins, all of that contribute to that, Brandon.
Let's go to the issue of processed foods. Now, I'm not a big fan of most of what comes out of San Francisco, but I am hearing this little news clip. Let's hear what they have to say. Here we go.
Effect on children has been particularly alarming.
In December, San Francisco City Attorney David Chu filed a landmark lawsuit against 10 manufacturers of ultra-processed foods, alleging that, like the tobacco companies, they knowingly engineered and marketed addictive, dangerous products while hiding the risks and causing a public health crisis. The Consumer Brands Association...
All right, so what do you make of this 60 Minutes piece? Processed food, they're comparing it now to, like the threat of tobacco companies. They knowingly engineered and marketed addictive, dangerous products while hiding the risk and causing a public health crisis. That's what's in the news today. Thoughts?
Absolutely. And I don't know if you've heard even Mike Tyson lately. I don't know if people like him or hate him. It doesn't matter. But he has made a statement that I'm like, that is just short and spot on. He's saying, these processed foods are like a narcotic. They're like a drug. And his 25-year-old sister died of obesity. And so he now is on the eat real food, of course, bandwagon with the MAHA movement. And processed foods are addictive, just like dairy, like cheese is addictive. It breaks down into casomorphines in the gut and it causes you to just want more. There are so many chemicals and toxins in our food, and the government has allowed it, for decades. Hence, President Trump now is on it with RFK Jr. to get those toxins out of our food. If you have been in Europe, or you've talked to friends or people that have been in Europe, and they're like, "Oh, I went all over Europe and I ate dessert and ate all these wonderful things and drank wine and whatever, and I felt fine. I actually lost weight," because Europe bans these toxins that we in America have been allowing into our food supply. And that Fruit Loops was at the top of the food chain if you listen to Mike Tyson and RFK Jr. And that was true. I mean, the food guide pyramid in the past had not a prayer of helping people get healthy. So yes, there are a lot of chemicals and toxins in processed food. So you've got to read the labels. If you can't pronounce it, don't eat it. The less ingredients on a label, the better. And eat the whole fruits and vegetables and the whole food in the grocery store perimeter rather than the junk boxed food in the center of the grocery store.
You know what I love? I don't like it raw, but I loved cooked or steamed broccoli. I love steamed broccoli. Is that a good thing?
Excellent.
Is that good?
It's excellent. It is a cruciferous vegetable. A lot of preventative qualities in there for cancer, and just broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, cabbage. They can be hard on your gut. Like if somebody has digestive health issues like diverticulosis or irritable bowel syndrome, they are a little tough on the gut, but they're extremely healthy. And here's the good news. Just a little tip for all of you. You can flavor your food without a lot of fat, so you love it. Like sea salt in the main has trace minerals, pretty good for you. You can shake different seasonings, dry herbs, fresh herbs, and saute, the broccoli, or like steam it, as you said, Brandon, and then add these different spices and flavorings that you like. Maybe you like hot and spicy, or maybe you like Italian, or
Logan, do I like hot and spicy? That's a big no. My family makes fun of me. They say I have the palate palate of a baby or an old man.
That's okay. You can put a little sea salt on it, or
I like sea salt,
and you're fine.
I like sea salt.
Yeah,
my family they laugh because we'll go somewhere to eat, or Melissa will make something. I'm like, "Whoa, that's too spicy. No, thank you," and I'll push it aside. And they're all like, "What is wrong with you? That's not spicy at all." I'm like, that's spicy. So I have a very sensitive palate. I don't like anything spicy. I prefer it to be pretty bland or neutral, at least. If not bland, neutral. I like, I don't like spicy. No spicy.
That's okay. It's better. It's better for your gut. It's better for your gut.
It's another thing. I ended up with, acid reflux. But I don't have that problem anymore because I'm on my Bella Grace. But ultra processed, here's somebody from back in 2025. I don't know who Dr. Rhoda Patrick is, but I found this. Ultra-processed foods fundamentally disrupt our brain, cellular and metabolic health. They now make up nearly 60% of the average American's diet and contribute to 90% of added sugar intake. Studies link them to hypertension, obesity, cancer, including breast cancer, and increased all-cause mortality. Kevin Hall's research has shown that when people eat highly processed foods, they consume up to 500 more calories per day, and the effects happen fast. A new study found that just 5 days on a high-calorie, ultra-processed diet led to a 63% increase in liver fat, despite no change in body weight, altered insulin activity in the brain, impairing metabolism, diminished reward sensitivity, and reduced white matter integrity in regions controlling motivation, cognition, and impulse control. The shocking part? These changes resemble those of a brain from someone with obesity persisted for up to a week after cutting out ultra-processed foods and returning to a regular diet. Even in a group of healthy, normal weight men, short-term overeating of calorie-dense but nutrient foods, snack foods, profoundly change brain behavior and metabolism. Imagine what years or decades of a poor diet can do. And there's some of the brain scans. What do you make of that, Doc?
Oh, there's so many studies and so much good information on this, because if you think about it, God made our bodies God made food. It's why we love the Gatatana, honestly. It's God's first food on the planet. So brilliant, eat that. And then The body knows what to do with the food that God made, or whatever people believe. We believe in God, but what nature made. So God made apples, or nature made apples. Nature made, your beautiful broccoli. Nature made cauliflower and sweet potatoes and strawberries and blackberries and asparagus. That's one food, one ingredient made in nature. Your body knows exactly what to do with all the phytonutrients and all the phytochemicals that are broken down in that whole food. It's one food, one ingredient. Your brain, your cells, the mitochondria inside your cells that make energy, everything in your body knows what to do when you're taking a bite of an apple or a fork of a nice cooked or steamed broccoli or sweet potato that's cooked. That is not the case in processed foods. Your brain in your body, your brain in your gut, and all the messaging going on in your body is saying, Houston, we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem. What is this? I don't know what this is. This isn't food. Well, what is it? Is it a foreign invader? And so you keep eating things that are not real food. It does disrupt the brain. It does disrupt the gut, because the gut fuels itself on plant food. Your beneficial bacteria, that's 70% of your immune system. You talk about cancer and all these other diseases, and even obesity and gaining weight. Your immune system, 70% of it is in your gut. I shared before how you sleep, the hormones for sleep in your gut, the hormones for your mood, happiness, whether you're calm and happy or anxious and full of anxiety and depression all the time. That hormone is made in your gut. Those good bacteria, the good bacteria in your gut, live on plant foods, live on greens, live on the broccoli, live on the asparagus. They live on plants. So absolutely, this, processed food, the brain and the body does not know what to do with it.
Have you seen the video footage of some of these ultra processed sandwich meats being made? Have you seen the video of it?
Yes, I have, actually, in school so many years ago, and I can't even remember the movie they had us watch, but it is, you will never eat a piece of lunch meat or a hot dog again after you watch those films.
I guess we all know about the hot dogs, but the lunch meat, it was like a big vat of this stuff being mixed together, and you're like, wonder what that is, and you find out later that's some of this lunch meat that you're buying in the grocery store, and you're like, what? You would think they're making the turkey and the roast beef and all this is coming from, they're in the butcher shop carving it up. But no, there's some huge vat and they're mixing this goop around and making your processed sandwich meat.
Exactly. And you think about your gut, your digestive system has to break all that down. Your body has to excrete it. Your kidneys have to excrete things. Men, the prostate has to empty. The whole body has to get rid of toxins and get rid of waste. So think about that too. And people are wondering, kidney cancer and, liver cancer and all of those cancers. The body is breaking down these poisons and toxins all the time. That's why I love what we do with the glutathione too. You've got your Balagrace, you've got your glutathione, because the glutathione is getting rid of trash. It's constantly detoxing your cells every time you swish. So we have a lot of good things now that we didn't have years and years ago that will help fight this. But the first thing you can do is look at what's on the end of your fork and what's on the end of your spoon. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just be aware and make sure that the bulk of your day, there's foods that are one ingredient foods. Like you can pick it up and a child in grade school could say, in first grade could say, this is an apple and it's green, or this is an apple and it's red, and they know what it is.
Yep, absolutely. Inspiredbywellness.com. Inspiredbywellness.com. And of course, if you want to get on the Gatatana that she's talking about, that Melissa and I take each and every day, as well as give half a scoop to Dolly, you'll find it at Melissa House GPA, melissahouseGPA.com. And the Dolly pet version is there as well. Another medical health news update. Dr. Lana on insulin resistance. The folks have that problem, pre-diabetic, 25% risk of developing 12 kinds of cancers. And then the addictive nature of processed food that even changes your brain and your cognitive ability and so much more. Be very aware, folks.
Absolutely.
Be very aware. Thank you, Dr. Lana.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, that's our broadcast for tonight. Roll the music. Let's call it a night. Hey, please remember to go to worldviewfoundation.com. Worldviewfoundation.com. Remember, as always, you'll find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. You'll also find the phone number. Now, we have been sending out the tax receipts. Remember, we had 2 weeks of no mail here. ICE, guys are having a hard time coming to work, but those tax receipts are going out now, folks. So be watching for them. And thank you for your support. Please continue to do so. And if you haven't, please consider doing so. Worldviewfoundation.com. We keep pushing out free programming like you've just watched tonight. May God save America. Take care.